Hi, good morning class, and good morning to all our viewers from the wider continent, especially to our viewers in Somalia, Algeria, Kenya and Rwanda, who are grappling with the same issues that we're going to be talking about today. Once again, just an introduction, we are the Economics for Development 2 class, a group of students from sunny Durban in South Africa who say, good morning to all our viewers across the world. Today we're going to be looking at a question which not only has implications in South Africa, but which across, for instance, the whole continent. For instance, especially in Kenya, who has lost half its elephants in the past decade due to poaching. We're going to be discussing today the issue of whether or not we should legalize the trade in ivory. To argue for the motion, we have Ms. Ayanda Ayamu and Ms. Fatiwe Sabanda, who are going to argue for the motion that we ought to legalize the trade in ivory. Against the motion, we have Ms. Samyaka and Ms. Koba, who are going to argue against the motion for us. So without further ado, we're going to have to introduce the side for the motion of legalizing the trade in ivory. We have, please.
Please, we have a brief welcome by Martley.
Oh, there's been a change in the program, like a helpful addition to give us a background. Thank you very much, ladies. And now, I'll ask you to settle back in your seats as we listen to this brief introduction. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So our arguments today will be centered around trading of particularly rhino and elephant horns. Currently, elephant and rhino poaching has reached a critical level. Just a decade ago, the continent of Africa was teeming with elephants and rhinos on its plains, but today they are walking into extinction. So how did we get here? In the 1970s and 80s, the demand for ivory skyrocketed. At this time, there was no monitoring of trade. Ivory was being sold legally, but being taken illegally. In 1989, CITES, the body that governs trade in endangered species, officially banned ivory trade. According to Dr. Paula Kahumba, the CEO of Wildlife Direct and head of the campaign Hands Off Our Elephants, which campaigns against the plight of rhinos and elephant poaching, led people to realize the role they were playing in killing these animals and change their buying decisions. There was a global ban of ivory trade in 1989 for 10 years, which seemed to help these species to recover and populate. However, this period led to the reopening of the market for ivory in 1999 and again in 2008, and a once-off sale of stockpile of horns and ivory from natural deaths of these species and game management called culling. Dr. Kahumba argued that this once-off sale was the biggest mistake, as it persuaded the world that we can nip in the bud. It was the beginning of the current poaching crisis. The message to the world with these once-off sales was that ivory trade will reopen sometime in the future, so start stockpiling.
Thank you for that, Martley. I am allowed to admit it. Very helpful introduction. I don't know whether I should actually include that in the time allocation, considering at the end she made points, that this started the illegal trade in ivory, that this fueled the trade in ivory, that is. Be that as it may, we will not penalize the group against legalizing the trade by deducting the time penalty from your time, but rather we will start with our 5-minute opening arguments each and not deduct any penalties. With the permission of the group, is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you, audience. Please.
A very good morning to you all, and thank you, Martha, for the brief background on ivory poaching. Imagine, guys, a world without animals, a world without elephants or rhinos. That would be an appalling world, whereby we'll be talking about them as time in history, in the same way that we talk of dinosaurs, because they are now extinct. According to South African National Parks, 67 elephants were poached in 2017 alone, and CITES estimate that between 2010 and 2012, 100,000 elephants were poached in Africa, of which 14,000 were in Southern Africa. The statistics are appalling. The elephants and the rhinos are going into extinction. So what shall we do? I'm in here for the motion that we should legalize the poaching and look for systematic ways of hunting. Natural resources are of importance in our lives. Their important lies within different corners of human livelihood, from economic importance, scientific importance, and social importance. It is therefore important to make an effort to preserve the environment that links humanity to its existence. The last decades have seen the chaos and disorder that has taken to the almost eradication of some commons due to disorderly poaching and killing of important animals, like the horns and the elephant and the rhinos in question. Jose Anton Filippo and others, in their paper, The Tragedy of the Ant-Commons, explain that when common resources are exploited, there is no central decision maker. That is to say, there's no one who has a say. Everyone does what they want and at whatever time they want to. He says that access to these resources and the right to use them is not well defined. Similarly, natural resources economists are particularly interested in common property or open access resources, such as the elephants and the rhinos, when no one has a say in killing, to say who has to hunt where and what time. So their interest is in the open access resources. Philaton and Starr decide that in open resources, anyone can extract or harvest the resources freely, and in this case, no one recognizes the full loss of using the resource. The extractors or the poachers of the whole consider only their own direct and immediate cost. The result, of course, leads to the resource to deplete quickly and scarcity leading to extinction. So then, why then shouldn't we legalize poaching? When we legalize poaching, we look for systematic ways of extracting the horns. Systematic ways such as formulating policies that can maybe licensing. When we have licenses and everyone has free access to the license and they have the right to poach. We also have maybe ways, another systematic way could be poaching maybe the ivory seasonally, whereby we don't really kill the elephants. We poach seasonally such that the horns of the ivory is open to the market. And everyone who has a license has access to buy them and resell. Michael in 1982 defines the notion of the ant-commons as a type of property in which everyone always has rights, respecting the objects in the regime, and no one consequently is ever privileged to use any of them except particularly authorized. What do we mean here? He's saying that the ant-commons is the notion that says people have got a right to something, but yet in actual fact they do not have the right to do so. Imagine you having your own property, but you can't access it, you can't use it. So what are you saying here? We're saying that for someone who owns something, they should be able to use it because it's theirs. The complexity of the matter is presented when someone is saying to own something but they can't use it. It happens, for example, with indigenous people who stay near the availability of the commons. It is their common land. They probably live their lives since time immemorial, and it's the land of their ancestors. They have spiritual connections to the land, but they can't poach, they can't hunt because it's against the laws. But the third part is that the poachers come in and poach, and they benefit themselves, not benefiting the local people or the indigenous people of a certain land. So why then can't we systematically allow poaching and hunting, legalize it, such that they do benefit? When taxes are paid, when licenses are bought, maybe the proceeds will go to the communities, maybe build schools, hospitals and clinics, such that they also have a right to owning, a right of belonging, other than having foreigners or other poachers coming in to benefit. Also, when poachers are poaching, they tend to kill these game rangers and the people. So why not kill two birds with one stone, whereby we save humankind, we save animals. We don't eradicate them, but we keep them for the purpose of procreation, such that they don't die, but we will have generations talking about elephants, where they see them and where they can witness them, rather than talking of them as in the history books. Thank you.
Thanks, Amina, for setting forth the arguments for poaching. Given the time overrun, we're going to also allow the side that is against the motion, we're going to allow them an extra minute to use as they see fit. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nomcebo, and I will be arguing against ivory trade. And just to answer your question, Amina, indeed, we can't imagine a world without animals, which is why we are actually against legalizing ivory trade, because it then what it does is it legitimizes and also encourages the processes which result in the extinction of these animals. So to start, there are certain universal truths about any trade. Illegal trade in any commodity provides a laundering mechanism for illegal goods. For example, there is a massive trade in the black market of tobacco and alcohol, generating millions of dollars for criminals. And with any trade comes the desire to maximize profits and increase demand, which inevitably leads to marketing aimed at stimulating demand and increasing sales. But ivory, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be grown in plantations or matured in distilleries when market forces result in increased demand. It can only come from either dead animals or injured animals. Advocating a legal trade in ivory is a way to protect elephants in the wild. Advocating a legal trade in ivory as a way to protect elephants in the wild is based on the assumption that of political will, best practices, and strict enforcement in a world devoid of corruption and greed. The reality, of course, is far from this vision. Regardless of whether you favor trade or not, it is worth remembering, according to Rice, that only 4 decades ago there was a thriving legal trade in ivory which was out of control, that inevitably led to African elephants facing extinction. Efforts at regulating that trade had failed, and because they had failed, in 1989, the international ban on ivory trading was adopted under the UN Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, providing a respite for many elephant populations and then allowing them to recover, as my colleague here has said in the introduction. From the bottom fell out of the ivory market, trade slumped, and just under a decade the ban was upheld in full. One of the arguments in favor of trade has been that having a regular supply of ivory provides security to traders, removing incentive to seek illegal stock. To all intents and purposes, this is what the 2008 sale provided. In fact, the Chinese government decided to limit the release of its 60 plus tons of ivory to 5 tons a year until 2016 and 17. But in March 2013, the Chinese delegates to CITES stated that they required 200 tons of ivory a year in order to satisfy the intense demand for the ivory products in China. One then is forced to ask themselves, what is enough? Because traders themselves agree that there is no amount of trade that can satisfy the current demand for ivory worldwide. And this demand continues to grow. So now the assumption that the ivory collected from Africa's elephant populations through natural mortality and management practices, which Amina was mentioning, can supply the amount is naive. Currently, the majority of African countries with elephant population oppose the trade in ivory. So then, if illegal supply is based on a supply of handful of countries that support trade, other population in countries that oppose trade will continue to be targeted, and the illegal markets will continue to thrive. This would occur at a time when elephant population across Africa are already facing other threats, especially habitat loss and climate change. And it almost seems inevitable that the number of elephants will decrease as the result of these factors. Also to mention, the 2008 sale was a major tipping point. Despite a wealth of evidence on the contrary, China persuaded the international community that it had developed a robust registration and control system for ivory that would ensure that no illegal ivory could enter the legal markets. The international community also believed that by flooding the markets with cheap ivory, there would be no incentive for legal traders to continue operating. The hope was that this would stop the poaching, which was at the crisis at that point in southern Tanzania. This could not be further from the truth. According to Rice 2014, a stockpiled ivory from 4 countries was also at auction on an average of $160 per kilogram to China and Japan. In China, this illegal ivory was sold to registered traders and dealers for anywhere from $450 to $1,500 per kilogram. So, and also once it reached the registered retail outlet, some of it was sold at around the equivalent of 7,000 per kilogram. This then goes to show that the whole thing of trying to create systems around this poaching epidemic is still not securing the people from actually moving away from illegal activity. So one could also say that illegal trade is comprised. Time over.
Size up, finish up, please.
Okay.
I'll give you half a minute.
Okay, cool. Okay, let me just move on. So my question to the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, is how do enforcement authorities distinguish between legal and illegal ivory? This is a question that most people who are for the legalization fail to answer, as current systems permitting regulation do not work. Legal markets also carry costs, and my argument is that even though a ban comes at a cost, but it is more straightforward and unequivocal. If a product is banned, everyone knows by definition it is illegal in the market, and it makes the job of enforcement personnel very easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomkebo, for that very impassioned and short introduction. What we have now is we're going to have Patiwe from the side that is for the motion to rebut some of the arguments, the many extensive arguments which Nomkebo made in our opening introduction. Patiwe.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm actually for the notion that trade in ivory should be legalized. Economically, individual appropriation of a common resource results in the individual privatization of a net benefit. This benefits only a few individuals, probably the rich and not the poor and unemployed. Hence, legalizing of ivory trade will benefit the whole community and nation economically, since there will be accountability and transparency. There has been an increase in or over-exploitation of resources due to high demand of ivory in black markets. As a sequence, the solution lies in the legalizing of trade in ivory. This will reduce demand in black markets and open free market trade and stability in the markets, whereby licenses could be introduced and there will be fixed prices agreed upon. Not legalizing trade in ivory and not dealing with poaching often discriminates against the poor, because those who illegally poach are mainly the big shots who has connections of where to sell the ivory. In a recent case being investigated is the former First Lady of Zimbabwe, who is being investigated for trafficking rhino horns and was named by the illegal poachers as their ringleader. The case was exposed by one journalist, Ms. Stein, who has had evidence. Hence, legalizing, therefore, will reduce but not eradicate such corrupt activities. Legalizing means policies or rules will be formulated that guard against not only poaching but such inequalities, whereby they will be monitored and evaluated. Considering future generations to come, we say trade in ivory trade should be legalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Patibe, for your being so brief, firstly, and then thank you for also pointing out something which has captured Southern Africans' attention throughout the past few weeks. Please, now we're going to have to rebut the previous speaker. The previous speakers. We're going to have Ms. Miake and Mafia, please.
Hi guys. Hi. It's me again. Okay, so I think that one of the reasons why we have poaching of elephants and rhinos is because we have philosophers such as Immanuel Kant who argued that animals are not persons because they are not rational, self-conscious beings capable of grasping the moral law, and so since they are not part of the kingdom of moral legislators, which is us, we do not owe them anything. Kant also argued that gave animals a lower moral status because he argued that the status of animals would diminish those of humans. This is the same way that people these days find it okay to poach rhinos and elephants because, well, what are they? Legalization of ivory trade is the same way we find conservationists fencing animals for preservation, which deprives animals of their freedom and a chance to develop their potential. You find the same people talk about culling of elephants in game reserves because now they are overpopulating and destructive to nature. Why are they fenced in the first place? For the amusement of humans? Imagine if animals suddenly grew sense and thought, these humans are overpopulating the earth and they are competing with us for space. Let's cull them. Amina, you mentioned that legalization of trade means rhino horns and elephant tusks can be appropriately harvested without harming the animal. But we tend to forget that these animals use their horns as a defense mechanism, making them vulnerable and susceptible to their predators. Let's save animals and let's let them be in their own nature. We don't need to justify why we need to keep those animals alive. The same way why environmentalists are against the cutting down of the forest behind tower residents for construction of the much needed residence for students. These are global monuments that sustain biodiversity. They need to be left where they are without disturbance. Don't legalize trade, our wildlife needs to be respected.
Thank you, Markley, and thank you to all our speakers who have sketched out the arguments for us. Now we're going to open the floor to questions. I'm going to slink off into the background. We're going to do this in batches of 3 with the permission of the speakers. Please pick up your hand, we'll get to you. What I ask is, if you want to address a particular question to a particular speaker, you're welcome to do that. Or if you want to address it to both sides or a particular side, you're welcome to do that as well. So, questions please. Thank you, Mandile. So you can just speak up so that you can pick up on the...
All right. No, thank you. I have quite a number of questions actually.
Excellent.
Maybe I have questions for the group that is for, and I have questions for the group that is against. So I'll state as I read out my questions to the groups that are going to be dealing with them.
Excellent. But just before you start your questions, Mandile, just ask the audience if they're okay with this. We'll take the first batch of questions, then we'll deal with Mandile's multiple questions, and then thereafter, in the second round, you can ask questions, as in the rest of the members of the audience. Okay. Thank you, Grant.
All right.
Please go ahead, Mandile.
Thank you very much. In the group that is for, the first question I have is, why should we consider poaching seasonally when the population of rhinos and elephants has depleted drastically over the past few years? Why not consider using ivory that is sitting in government's ivory banks, such as the ones found in Tanzania? Because they're saying they no longer want to use those the government collected those from people that were poaching rhinos and elephants. Why not? Because they don't want to sell it to the black markets. They also don't want to sell it for their own gain. Why not speak to them, because they have a lot of reserves of ivory? In the group that is against, I mean, governments have failed or shown little political willingness to solve the problem of ivory poaching. The Chinese in particular have seen a rise in the demand for ivory over the years, because in the Chinese society, having ivory is seen as it's a status thing. It gives you a status of prestige, of being of a particular class. What assurance then do we have that once it has been outlawed, the demand will plummet in the Chinese governments? Like for the group that is for, for the group that is against, there's research in stem cells. Stem cells are they're biological material that is found in when a child, for example, is born. In the umbilical cord, those cells are able to reproduce to any type of body parts. Why not invest in technology that looks at how we can use those stem cells to generate or to heal the elephants that have already been used for their ivory? Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Bandile, for the extensive list of interesting, very questions. I'm going to ask is the group that is for the motion, if you could please answer. Please don't feel afraid to answer any of those questions if you feel that you have some input on them. Okay, please go ahead, Amina and Fatima.
All right, thank you so much for the good question. You say that why not use the ivory that is in reserves? Still, we are going to use, suppose we use the ivory that is in reserves, it will come to finish at some point, right? So still the notion of using other ways of poaching, legal ways of poaching is still needed. Suppose it finishes now, what happens? Why not leave those rhinos now to procreate and multiply? Leave them now and let's use this one. Then at some point we still need to legalize it and use them. It's a process that is perpetual. It's not going to end now because we've used the ivory that is in reserves.
If I may just ask on that, yes, to the group that is for that is against the motion, I think this raises a very challenging ethical issue, because we have all these stockpiles that aren't being sold and they're being destroyed. Can we defend that? Because if they have all these stockpiles at the moment, they're just wasting storage to be destroyed. Can we actually defend that? These are animals that are already dead. So you said we should burn them?
Yes. Because it sort of opens the market that it's okay, if they die, we'll sell them. Which means that people are just going to wait for that time or find ways to kill these animals so that this ivory can be collected and be sold. So let's just burn them and not have the market at all. Like, just don't do it at all. Don't open the market for ivory. Don't.
Okay, thank you. Rest of this question.
Was he answered?
For the first question, you answered it.
Okay, the thing is, for me, the ivory that is sitting in those reserves, it can give us time to find other ways in which, if there's really a need for ivory, because if it's used for a public good, maybe for curing cancer, for example, maybe that could be something that can be entertained at some point as to why we should legalize it. But right now, there's no benefit for the public for ivory, for example. So why not then deal with the one that is already there instead of destroying it for your own benefit? Because the jewelers, as well as those the Chinese, it's for status for them. Why not use what is already there? Once you finish that, you know that you don't have any more. That was the way that I wanted to actually articulate the question.
So if we can have the rest of Pandilia's questions, please.
Okay, so you asked about China, ivory being a status, isn't it?
Yes.
And how are we sure that if it's outlawed, it will not climb it? I mean, honestly, we can't be 100% sure that it, you know. But what I will say is that when we say it should, for us, we are advocating for the ban of. I personally am advocating for the ban of poaching and agri trading. So I mean, the answer is we're not sure if it's gonna plummet or do the contrary. Yeah, we're not sure.
So, but I think both sides had mentioned that was banned in 1989. What happened to ivory demand before and after? You could surely tell us a bit about what happened there.
We said that after it was banned, it still increased, which is why they ended up having the ones sale off because of the demand of ivory in 1999 and as well in 2008.
So let me just get this straight. So after the ban in ivory, demand still increased.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear that? Okay. Thank you. The second question about stem cells, please.
The second question is with regards to how, for example, let's say we're in an environment where we know that elephant poaching is what is happening. So, and we know that these elephants and rhinos are on the brink of extinction. Why not consider using stem cell technology to be able to assist the animals that have been poached, for example, but are still alive, so that you give them a fighting chance in the wild, you know?
I mean, for me, the question is why do we actually even have to go to such extremes when we can just do away with the whole thing? You know, I don't think we should actually be wasting more resources when we can just.
I mean, for example, you've indicated that the demand increased even after the ban. There was 2 once-off sales that were open, and the demand is still increasing. So clearly, this is a problem that is affecting this industry, because it is an industry, whether we like it or not. So, for the safety of these animals, why not then consider saving the animals by using their stem cells to actually help them?
Well, that is the motion that's set before the class, and you will get a chance to vote on that right at the end of our discussion, question and answer session. Now I'm going to move on just quickly in the interest of time. Just 3 other questions, please. And please, Scoop, just to both. Is it to a comment? Is it a question to both? Please just, yeah, please, and please speak up, please.
On you guys were on the demand and society of the poaching. So my question basically is for the presenters that before the idea of legalizing. So I wanted to ask, would legalizing the sale of rhino poles satisfy the demand and yet reduce the poaching? Do you guys think if you guys are legalizing it, would then satisfy the demand of it and then start reducing?
So I'm not quite
Sorry, if you can hear.
I'm not sure I get what she's saying.
My question is, do you guys think that if you guys are legalizing rhino poles, would it then satisfy people wanting to, would legalizing the sale of rhino poles satisfy the demand and yet reduce poaching? That's my question. Then you are legalizing it, and then if people now know of and are allowed to poach rhinos, would then that lead to them being satisfied and then reduce maybe wanting to want more of the poaching?
Just hang on, please. We're going to take the investor, please. Yes, go.
I have a question for the group for the legalization of ivory.
Yes, yes.
In your own views, who should actually set the legal framework? Who should draft the policies? Should it be on a global level? And how will that actually impact on the countries themselves, especially when there are some countries who are already against the legalization of ivory trade? So who should draft those policies and those laws in your own views?
We have time for one more question, please. Yes.
Okay, asking here the group which is for the motion. No, you didn't specify more. Where are you arguing these to be legalized? Is it here in South Africa or the other countries at large? Because if you say you want to legalize this transaction here in South Africa, it's more like you are trying to monopolize a certain market whereby we are not actually constructing clear barriers to entry into that market, because you claim that the demand actually originates from China. If you're trying to actually monopolize this market, whereas you cannot actually control the demand or influence it, how exactly then are you claiming that legalizing this market will be effective?
Excellent question, but I actually would like not the group that is against the motion to get off the hook. I would actually like if after the group that is for has handled the questions, if you guys could just answer Pedro's question. And you had mentioned during your earlier comment that certain countries oppose the legalization of the trade. Which countries? Just think on that while perhaps we answer, because there was a comment made during your presentations. If we just get some statistics on what is the sentiments of policymakers in this regard. Please, Amina.
Okay, first maybe I would have to respond to a question when she's talking of satisfaction, whether the poachers will be satisfied. It's not a question of human needs, I don't think so. It's a question of rules and regulation, what we have to abide by, what we have to follow. Because as humans, we will never be satisfied. I can always want to poach and have so much. But we're saying let's follow the procedures, let's follow the law so that there is stability and transparency in everything. When you're talking of human, that's out of the question.
Okay, so what we're saying is there'll always be a certain level of demand, but you'll use a price mechanism.
Yes, there will always be a certain level of demand.
That is going to be unmet.
Yes.
But, okay, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
With legalizing, and at the moment we have markets, but we also have a black market, like I said, that people will do it illegally. And another thing is, by legalizing and giving everyone an opportunity of like a license of saying, if the whole of us have a license, then we all want. And maybe we have like 50 rhinos and we allowed to have like 3 each, and then there's just a whole lot of us that have the license. I mean, will that still?
But I do think the group is going to address that now when they address the Pelo's question about which body is going to regulate this. Sorry, the last question. Which body is going to regulate it? How are you going to, please?
I think it must be global.
And to add on to that, I think everything starts from a nation. Because rhinos are not only saying South Africa. I think this question will also coincide with it. They are not only in South Africa, there are some in Zimbabwe. We can also find poachers going to poach in Zimbabwe and United Show, but there have to be laws starting from a nation and then international, like in the same way we've got maybe football laws. They apply globally, isn't it?
But CITES does regulate the global trade. I believe it's enforcement, which is at the local level, rather than a national level. Right?
It starts from the local level, from the level of the country.
But do you think that still addresses the Does it still address your point?
So each country must have its own laws on how to poach.
I think they should come.
Or there must be one global law.
I think there should be one global law.
So what if countries don't agree to that law, to that international law?
But I think they have to come up together and find something. Because, like you're saying, laws start from a certain nation where there are elephants. In Zimbabwe, there are elephants. They're having problems, people poaching. In Zimbabwe, they've got to start laws and say, what are we going to do with the poachers? They tabulate and come up with solutions. Solutions maybe that will apply to those who come and poach. Poachers are not only in Zimbabwe. They might be from South Africa or going to Zimbabwe to poach, or the other way around.
Please, if you can just now ask quickly, which countries?
I mean, one case study that I'm more familiar with would be southern Tanzania, where in 2008 they actually faced the poaching crisis and were actually now against the activity. And then China actually also went to the international community to try and actually convince them that they have actually come up with robust systems to control the poaching. But I know Tanzania was actually at that point not wanting poaching to continue.
And the rest of Africa, you mentioned that certain countries actually do want to lift the ban. Countries in Africa, or which countries in Africa, for instance, do want to lift the ban on?
I know Tanzania.
Would like to lift the ban on.
Wait, lifting the ban means
legalizing.
Legalizing.
You said that you said that certain countries actually oppose. Right?
Oh.
Yeah. So
okay.
which countries oppose this having the illegal market?
South Africa is
South Africa would like to have the trade in.
Yeah, to legalize it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, just hands up of the South Africans. Who of you actually knew that
No.
South Africa
has campaigns against rhino poaching.
Yeah. So you're saying that the South African government actually wants to legalize?
No, the sentiments of so that it's more controlled in terms of like.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the sentiments around that will cut, not the sentiments rather what would come with the legalization would actually protect. That's the argument, to protect the rhinos. There are people that are opposing it, and there are people that are saying legalizing it would actually sort of be a
So there's no uniformity both within countries and across the continent. There are certain countries that are both for and against that, as well as within countries. Okay, so it's just important we get that idea that this is still very a contested terrain,
yes.
Even though it is something illegal at the moment. Okay. Just one more round of questions, please. If you got, please.
Yes, I need to ask the groups, since they are all dealing with the act of trading, but I haven't heard anyone dealing with the actual need, the demand, where does this demand come from? How are they going to deal with the demand rather than the act? Because the act, how trading, how poaching came about, is the effect of a certain need lying underneath. So, basically, will it be a good idea then to deal with this demand, this need for rhino horns or elephant parts, to say maybe instead of dealing with the poaching, maybe we just replace it? I'm just
Thank you. Very interesting comment. Thank you. And I think for both groups, actually, it'll be fair enough for both for and against to answer that question. Thank you.
I just want to ask that group that is against.
Yes.
If they are proposing the banning of poaching, I want to know what are they proposing about ivory that already exists, or what should happen to the people that are found owning it. Should it be illegal to own it or to have it, to be in possession of it already, or what is supposed to happen with that? And also with the group that is for, I want to ask, I heard them speaking on something about poaching, it doesn't benefit the communities and all that stuff. And I want to know, what is their suggestion with regards to licenses? Should they be given to communities so that they can economically benefit, or to private companies or national government?
But might I just ask though, won't the same contestations about rights, if you give it to the community, won't it have to be someone in the community? I'm just a bit unclear about how you're going to...
Probably it could be not someone in the community, but the community, maybe an NGO in the community, or they could create a co-op, something like that within the community. That's what benefits the whole...
That is going to trade on behalf of the community.
Yes, that's going to trade on behalf of the community.
Okay. Thank you, excellent. And just one more question, please. We had a hand. I take it from everybody in their cell phones, you're Googling some really interesting statistics, on the elephant trade that you're going to ask about. Okay. Thank you. If we can just, I think now the side that is against the motion has had an easy time of doing the last round of questioning. If you could start first, and then the side that is for the motion would start next. Please, Debo.
What's the question of how to deal with demand?
Yeah, right by intermission.
To be honest, I'm not sure, but I think for the
because demand is driven by so many things, so how to deal with it.
yeah.
Maybe we start with what's the use? What do Africans have use of for ivory? I mean, is the demand emanating from Africa?
It's actually China mostly, like Asia.
Then what has happened with? I know that there are elephants in Southeast Asia. What has happened to elephant populations in Southeast Asia? What means to discriminate on?
They use them for religious reasons, but other than that, they're medicinal. But in terms of them being poached, it's not a crisis.
So why do you think it's not a crisis so much? You said there's not a crisis in Southeast Asia in terms of there are stable elephant populations. So what do you mean by it's not a crisis? Why? What is it? What makes it peculiar about Africa? Is it weak enforcement? Is it cheaper to get ivory from Africa? Why is it a crisis in Africa?
I think probably it has to do with the notion that there's abundance of these resources in Africa, and also putting that context towards animals. So people tend to flood to where there's a pool of resources.
And what about the secondary market, or should it be legal to own ivory? So if I have an ivory necklace being bestowed down from my great grandmother, for example, should it be legal to sell it, or should it be legal to own it? Yes.
Sorry.
Please.
No, I feel like if you already have it, then it should be okay. But what you can't do with it is sell it.
I mean, I think this is like the land issue. It's very contentious.
But is that realistic? To say that if I have something, I can't sell it? Is that realistic?
Original human rights.
What do you guys think? And then if it is, how realistic is it to control the ivory market, because you have this secondary market which is actually in operation? Right. Sorry, if you guys would want to handle that question, please.
I'm not so sure if I can, but I think when you say it's okay for someone to wear an ivory bracelet that has been made maybe through dubious means, it also means that it's okay to poach. Then we're saying if you legalize ivory, then everything that comes with it, the ornaments, they're sold freely because they are licensed. If it's free, it's okay to poach them and sell it. But now the question is right side, why are you wearing a bracelet? How did you get it? How come it exists?
Was he not
Get it?
asking though
It's
that?
contradicting.
Was he not asking what should happen to those who already own? Yes.
Yeah, legally.
Legally. Now is there legality now?
So not illegal. Listen, the trade is illegal, but it's almost as if and from what the groups have said is that after 1989, the trade became illegal. Right. But if you had an ivory bracelet, an ivory necklace, an ornamental sword, for example, that had an ivory handle, that would have been acquired, that ivory that was used to make it, would have been acquired legally. Right? So that acquiring the ivory at the time wasn't illegal. Owning that ivory as it is now, it's not illegal. But what happens is, this is the question I asked to the group that is against the motion is that should it be that I cannot own it? If I can own it, I can actually trade it. And it breaks down the argument of whether or not we have a trade in ivory. We actually do have a trade in secondary ivory, secondary market, or a market for second-hand ivory.
I think, as I insinuated earlier, I think it's like the land question of people that actually have rights to ownership. But, sorry. Okay.
I think we must be very clear.
Okay.
We're dealing with the ivory market here. We're going to be dealing in another. For our members, our audience, our online members, we're going to be dealing with questions of the land issue in our third seminar. So please stay tuned. Please stay tuned if you want to hear more about land restitution in South Africa. I think we have to be very clear on what is the nature of the argument.
But what I'm trying to say is, then you could also make an argument of expropriating those who already own it, and if that could, because there's really what's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you. And then I want and then I think for the side that is the side that is for the motion, I don't think we'd handle Nomiso's comments. What are we doing about demand side of the market? We've heard a lot about the supply side. Just tell us a bit about the demand side of the market. Are there any, for instance, any regulations on who can buy something, as the group had mentioned, in China? Please, if you could just inform the audience.
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I think since it's illegal, those who sell ivory need back doors. I'm not sure if there's quite a market where people buy ivory open. I'm not quite sure if there is a market that allows people to sell and buy ivory in the open. I'm thinking it's just a black market. That's why the demand is high.
Okay. Any other last questions and comments for the group before we go to our vote? Anything else? Then without much further ado, we're going to say goodbye to our online audience, and we're going to encourage you please to log your comments, log your votes for both as well the speakers, either for or against the motion, as well as remember to stay tuned. We're going to be continuing this for another 6 sessions for this year, so please do stay tuned. And in the meantime, we bid you goodbye and
bye-bye.
Thank you, and see you next time.
Sure.
Please.